From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. The U.S. has paused military aid to Ukraine following a heated Oval Office exchange between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Reports quote a White House official saying aid is under review to ensure it contributes to peace. Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance accused Zelensky of being ungrateful for years of U.S. support. Following the dispute, Zelensky left the White House abruptly. A planned press conference and deal-signing ceremony on critical minerals were canceled. Despite the clash, Trump suggested the minerals deal with Ukraine is still possible. The decision to pause aid raises concerns about U.S.-Ukraine relations amid Russia's ongoing war on Ukraine. In related news, Senator Bernie Sanders slammed President Donald Trump on Monday for siding with Russian President Vladimir Putin. For the first time, a U.S. president is ready to abandon Democratic allies for a dictator, he said in a statement. Referring to a heated meeting last Friday between Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, Sanders said Trump's attacks were a gift to Putin. Sanders accused Trump of dividing the Western alliance and weakening Ukraine's defense. He has warned that Trump's stance could embolden Putin, prolonging Russia's war on Ukraine. He also condemned Russia's violent suppression of dissent and enrichment of oligarchs under Putin. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has signed a memorandum renaming Fort Moore in Georgia to Fort Benning. The Pentagon said the new name pays tribute to Corporal Fred Benning for his extraordinary heroism in action during World War I. The base, which was originally named after Confederate Lieutenant General Henry Benning, was renamed Fort Moore in 2023 under President Joe Biden. Hegseth made a similar move last month to rename Fort Liberty in North Carolina to Fort Bragg after a World War II soldier and Silver Star recipient Roland Bragg. U.S. stocks plunged after President Donald Trump confirmed that tariffs on Canada and Mexico would take effect today. He also announced new reciprocal tariffs on agricultural products starting April 2nd. Economic data added to the market's woes. The U.S. manufacturing PMI fell to 50.3%, missing forecasts. Personal consumption dropped by 0.2% in January, defying expectations of a rise. The goods trade deficit hit a record $153.3 billion. The Dow Jones tumbled 649 points, down 1.48%. The S&P 500 slid 1.76%, while the Nasdaq dropped 2.64%. The VIX Fear Index surged more than 16%, signaling investor anxiety. Trump joked that he avoided launching tariffs on April 1st to dodge April Fool's Day confusion, but observers say markets were not amused, reacting sharply to his trade policies and weak economic signals. Canada has hit back at U.S. tariffs that came into effect today. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a 25% tariff on American imports in response to the U.S. trade move. He said Canada will not let this unjustified decision go unanswered. His announcement follows President Donald Trump's decision to reinstate tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico. Trudeau confirmed that Canada will impose immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. goods, with the remaining $125 billion targeted in 21 days. The Canadian tariffs will remain until the U.S. withdraws its trade measures. Trudeau also warned that Canada is considering further non-tariff measures in consultation with provinces and territories. Observers say the trade standoff signals escalating tensions between the two countries, with both sides standing firm.
It's hard to predict how this is all going to play out because seems to be the game being played here, that the game is to be unpredictable. But growing up in Windsor, we've always lived in a place where an American flag stood side by side with a Canadian flag. We grew up kind of being a suburb of the United States. To see this action taken when the North American economy is so woven together, it's really puzzling to us what the outcome is going to be.
We're bringing more news stories after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Assalamu alaikum. This is the largest refugee camp in the world. 1 million people are sitting here, doing nothing essentially, cannot study, cannot have a living, and world has to give them, feed them bit by bit, little bit of food. I find children, all skinny children around me, and they are wondering what's our future. Since I came from America, they're asking me this question: what's the future for us? Please join Burma Task Force. It's a coalition of 38 organizations. Support Burma Task Force, join Justice for All. Let's change the future for 1 million people sitting here in the world's largest refugee camp for 7 years. Join now.
Welcome back. Billionaire Elon Musk's unofficial Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, is seeking more than $4 million from the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM, for IT modernization. A draft deal shows the White House asked OPM to fund 20 full-time positions within Musk's team from January 20th to July 4th, 2026. Salaries range from over $141,000 to above $189,000 annually, totaling $4.1 million over 17 months. Payments would be made in advance each month, but it is unclear if any have been made. The team argues that modernizing OPM's IT systems is urgent. However, critics accuse DOGE of mass layoffs and unchecked access to government data. Though Musk calls himself a volunteer, he is seen as the public face of the team, backed by President Donald Trump. The White House insists that Musk is only an advisor, but his team operates outside federal records laws. The humanitarian crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is worsening. The government warns the situation will turn very dramatic due to U.S. aid cuts. Communications Minister Patrick Muyaya Katembwe stressed that 70% of aid in the East came from U.S. aid. With the agency's funding halted, the crisis is set to escalate. Children are at high risk. Many between the ages of 13 and 18 are being kidnapped, and schools are unsafe. The cuts follow a decision by the Trump administration, influenced by billionaire Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, to shut down U.S. aid operations. This has disrupted global aid programs and media funding. Meanwhile, violence is surging as the M23 rebel group now controls key cities, including Goma and Bukavu. Fighting since January has left over 8,500 people dead and 5,700 injured. A recent explosion at an M23 rally in Bukavu killed 16 and injured 17. Muyaya called for international pressure on Rwanda, which is accused of backing M23. The U.S. and the U.K. have already imposed sanctions on Rwanda's capital, Kigali. The situation remains dire, with urgent action needed. In related news, the United Nations World Food Programme is shutting down its Southern Africa Bureau due to funding shortages. This follows the Trump administration's decision to cut 90% of USAID's foreign aid contracts. Operations for both Southern and Eastern Africa will now be managed from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The agency did not disclose how much funding was lost, but the United States provides nearly half of its annual budget. The closure comes as Zambia, Malawi, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and Namibia battle severe droughts. However, the agency says in-country operations will continue. Spokesman Thompson Perry said the funding outlook has become constrained, with the United States being its largest donor. The World Food Programme provides food and cash aid to people affected by disasters, famine, and conflicts. Israeli airstrikes targeted Syria's coastal city of Tartus late Monday. No casualties have been reported. According to Syrian news agency Sana, civil defense teams are assessing the impact. Israeli media earlier hinted at the attack, with reports of heavy Israeli aircraft activity over Syria. The Israeli military later confirmed it had struck a military site in Al-Qaradaha, Latakia. It claimed the site stored weapons linked to the deposed regime of former President Bashar al-Assad. The Israeli army claimed the attack was necessary due to recent developments. Since the fall of the Assad regime in December, Israel has expanded its occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights by seizing the demilitarized buffer zone. Israel's defense minister has warned of more strikes if Syrian forces establish a presence near Israel's security zone in the region. Last week, Israeli forces also bombed the capital Damascus and southern Syria. Reports suggest Israel has expanded its control over the Syrian Golan Heights since Assad's fall, violating a 1974 disengagement agreement. Israel has carried out numerous airstrikes in Syria, targeting military assets, air defense systems, and infrastructure. Authorities in Syria insist they pose no threat to regional security. An Arab summit on Gaza's reconstruction began in Cairo today. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi proposed an independent committee to govern Gaza. His plan counters President Donald Trump's proposal to forcibly transfer Gaza's population to Egypt and Jordan. The $53 billion plan, spanning 5 years, rejects Palestinian displacement. It proposes a Gaza administration committee made up of technocrats and non-partisan officials under the Palestinian Authority for 6 months. Security in Gaza would be handled by Palestinian police trained by Egypt and Jordan. The plan suggests the UN Security Council may consider deploying international peacekeeping forces. Egypt's proposal also emphasizes a two-state solution. It calls for a temporary truce, ending unilateral actions by Israel, including settlements and land annexations. Armed resistance should cease if a peace deal is reached. The reconstruction plan includes temporary housing for displaced Palestinians. The first phase would cost $3 billion, focusing on clearing rubble and providing shelter. Two major phases, costing $20 billion and $30 billion respectively, would rebuild homes, roads, and key infrastructure. The plan includes an airport, seaport, and industrial zone. Funding would come from UN agencies, donor countries, and international investments. Sisi called on Arab leaders to support Egypt's post-war Gaza plan and announced a major reconstruction conference next month. A suicide bomber struck a security convoy in Pakistan's southwestern Balochistan province on Monday, killing 1 soldier and injuring 4 others. Local official Bilal Shabir said the attack was carried out by a woman who detonated explosives near the passing convoy. The explosion killed 1 soldier while 4 others were injured. One of the injured soldiers is reported to be in critical condition. Following the attack, security forces sealed off the area and launched an investigation. The injured were taken to a military camp for medical treatment. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. The brother of former World Uyghur Congress President Dolkun Isa is serving a 20-year sentence in the Chinese-occupied East Turkestan region. The Chinese government convicted 63-year-old math professor Yalkun Isa of inciting terrorism. Yalkun taught at Aksu Education Institute, where more than 24 Uyghur educators were arrested in 2017. He was accused of contacting people abroad, downloading foreign content, and allegedly inciting others to form an organization. Police reports suggest his ordinary discussions on international affairs were misrepresented as incitement. Authorities interrogated Yalkun for a month, forcing him to confess that his brother had instructed him to establish an organization and carry out terrorism. He was tried in a closed court and sent to Urumichi Prison No. 1. Dolkun Isa, who led the Germany-based World Uyghur Congress from 2017 to 2024, condemned the sentence, saying his family is being punished for his activism. His mother died in what the Chinese government calls re-education camps in 2018. His other brother, Hushtar Isa, was also imprisoned. Human Rights Watch says these are internment camps used to indoctrinate Uyghurs and other Muslims since 2017 as part of the Chinese government's war on terror. China denies targeting Uyghurs unfairly, claiming security measures combat extremism. However, activists say mass detentions aim to suppress Uyghur identity, with thousands of intellectuals imprisoned. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for greater Muslim representation in global decision-making. Speaking to foreign ambassadors in Turkey's capital Ankara, he said Muslims make up a quarter of the world's population and must have a voice in global affairs. Erdogan stressed that it is imperative for an Islamic country to have veto power in the UN Security Council. He has long pushed for UN reforms. His remarks came during an iftar, a fast-breaking meal, at the end of the 3rd day of Ramadan. Erdogan emphasized fair representation is essential for global justice and peace. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. Please donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.